But the truth is, cultures are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And our American culture, so influenced by the Bible,
Yep.
is way better than North Sentinel. And I would even say that the island of North Sentinel Island is so wicked and depraved that for a nation to go in and conquer would be just.
And welcome to Tearing Down High Places. My name's Average Joe. Welcome, Tim and Jeff, my favorite pastors. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing well, Joe. Glad to be here. Good to see you. How's Idaho?
Idaho's wonderful. We're just trying to figure out if we want to be part of the empire or not. What do you guys think about the American empire?
I think that's a great topic for today. There are so many stories. We've got Iran, we've got Venezuela, and we've got Greenland. Let's talk about Greenland.
Yay!
Why don't you guys weigh in, then I'll give you my opinion. What do y'all think about us grabbing up Greenland?
You want me to go first, Tim? You want to go first?
You go first, Joe. I'll go second, and then Pastor Jeff can tell us who's right and who's wrong.
Okay, that's a great way to do it. That's it. Always put the average guy first, because you can always go up from there. So here's what I'm thinking, man. I am not like an empire. I'm not liking it. I think it's inconsistent and arbitrary, and that's not what Christians ever can be. That's the thing that makes us unique and distinct from all the other lies out there. So I think our now maybe if we stated as a country that this was who we are, and maybe that is what we are in the process of doing. So those are other things, right? So if we had somehow said, you know what, we're a biblically based Christian society and the rest of the world is destroying itself, and to prevent nuclear holocaust, we're taking over everything, and we did it in a lawful, just process, I might sign on to that. But what I think we're looking at is one sin covering up for other sins, right? So new sins that we're going to engage in to cover up the fact that we've lied, we have not followed our own laws, we have not stayed out of debt, we have not balanced our budget, have allowed corruption and stealing across not just our country, but we've spread that corruption and stealing across the planet. So in order to cover up for it, we're going to do what every other massive empire did in the past and take over new lands, bring in new revenue, and make the stock market look good. What say y'all?
Well, I think I'm the below average take, because I don't know too much about what's going on right now. But it seems like President Trump really wants a 51st state. I feel like he wanted to make Canada the 51st state, but they probably were unwilling. If Greenland's willing to come under America's umbrella, and it protects Greenland from, maybe like forces like Russia or anything evil that might arise, if it's good for us and good for them, what's the problem?
And Pastor
That's
Jeff,
all I know.
Pastor Jeff, what are you thinking?
Tim, have we ever disagreed about anything? Man, we think similar. So I don't want to see us like manufacture a reason to go in there and conquer a people that don't want to be conquered. But let's say that there was some kind of offer like $100,000 per person living in Greenland to the Denmark government, that they would, like the Louisiana Purchase, give up territory for a trade, right? So it's like an economic deal. If they were willing to do that, I would be in favor of that, because I think the price that we would have to pay would pale in comparison to the value that could be gained. As time goes on, the value of land and natural resources, that's what really matters. Like think back to the expansion of the United States of America. each case, the Louisiana Purchase, as we took more and more territory, there were benefits to America. Now, I would say that empire in general is not necessarily bad. Think about the British Empire. When England came to India, what were the people of India practicing? The widows would throw themselves on the fire to kill themselves whenever their husbands died. The orphans were completely mistreated. The worship of idols was all there was. Now, there were also negative things that came with empire, but you look at what happened because of the British Empire. Look where the British Empire went compared to anywhere else in the world. What's the difference between a British colony, the United States of America, and all of the Spanish colonies to the south of us? If you just go by Australia, South Africa versus the other countries, the British Empire has a really good legacy. I mean, the United States of America is a British Empire colonial project.
Reminds me of Genesis 50:20, what you meant for evil, God used for good, but it's not good. The British Empire, being an Irish guy,
yeah.
I was brought up to hate the British. In fact, my parents and family, they conflate being British with Protestantism, and they hang on to their Catholicism because the British were so wicked and evil.
Well, you have to take it farther back than that. Like, so if you go back all the way to the 8th, 9th century, Alfred the Great and the creation of Britain, it wasn't formed as an ethnicity. It was actually the Vikings from the Danish that had come over as Vikings and took over most of England, and the Anglo-Saxons and the Brits. It was like 4 different major people groups that it was maybe 2 generations after Alfred. They all unified as one people. And that's where the Protestant tradition really took over in all of those regions of Ireland remained a separate island.
Yeah. Oh, no. Hey, I got Viking blood. Queen Gore, she conquered lands in Ireland and decided to stay in the northern regions of Donegal. So, yeah, I know all about. And there's a thing called a Viking disease we all have. But listen. Here's the thing. I got another story. That I had. I went to Athens. I was standing on the Acropolis with a guide. And I was in this guide, and the guide said to us, he said, I asked him, I said, where's all the beautiful things that I've read about in books about that Greece made, all these beautiful statues, and because it's all crumbled garbage, really. There's not a lot of stuff. He goes, well, first the Egyptians stole things. He goes, and then the Romans stole things, and they were horrible. He goes, but nobody was as bad as the British. And the British Empire ruled everything. And I think they just ruled. That was the last empire to be ingrained in that memory of that person he was an older guy. He was like in his 90s, and giving this tour, and he was really interesting. But yeah, he really hated the British, and yeah, I mean they brought slavery, like chattel slavery, not like the good kind of slavery I like from the Book of Samuel, but.
All right, so let's dive a little deeper into this, right? So, where was Hudson Taylor from?
Hudson, I don't know who's Hudson Taylor.
Oh, come on now, Joe. Britain.
I'm just put my average on. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was a missionary, and he goes to China, founds the China Inland Mission. When he goes in 1850 to China, they are still practicing foot binding. The little girls of the Chinese people would have to have the bones of their feet crushed into a little point.
Yep.
And they would be held that way when they kind of reach 6, 7 years old until they're old enough for their feet to form bound in that deformed way.
Right.
That was what Chinese culture was before British Empire, right? So now Hudson Taylor was the first to bring the gospel inland. That's China Inland Mission. And British culture overtakes China to some level. Now, in fact, when Hudson Taylor got there was a fake Christian revival that went over the land, the Taiping Rebellion. But the true culture of Christianity and what the British brought took root there and undid the practice of, in India, suti or Chinese foot binding. People don't really emphasize enough the good that British Empire brought to the world. So let me just put it this way. The British Empire brought the gospel to the ends of the earth. It was on the trading ships that missionaries traveled.
Mm-hmm.
So God used it. Now, here's the thing, and I see we're a little bit different on whether it's good or bad. The nations in Genesis chapter 10 are an invention of God. And you're supposed to have a nation according to their language, according to their tribe, their clan, as a nation. So there were 70 nations at first in Genesis chapter 10. And that's God's design. But one of the reasons God did not create one world government is because humanity is so corrupt. We're so evil. So what he did is he created nations. But the function of a nation then, as such, is to police one another. There's checks and balances. So if somebody like Hitler in Nazi Germany gets out of balance, invades Poland, takes over all of Europe, France and all, another nation, in this case Britain from one side and even wicked Russia on the other side, on the east, will come against that nation in war. So here's how God works in history. If there were 70 nations back then, now there's 195. It's not necessarily wrong for nations to combine, but it has to be for just causes. So that's why, Joe, we were talking earlier about just war theory. It really comes into that. That's the question. Whether a nation policing another is according to a just cause. God can wield a nation like a sword of government against a rogue dictator or some other country that's going wild. So that's actually where the discussion needs to be.
Well, I love going that route. So do you think so far we have acted according to just war theory?
Well, just war theory, are you referring to Aquinas and, what developed there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
theory as it's historically been understood. Is that biblical war theory?
Amen. That's my question, right? So, I mean, my concern would be, number one, that we're acting in a defensive way, right? And so that's why I was all for Trump being able to attack those drug boats. I mean, as long as he can, I mean, there were lots of questions thrown out there, which I don't know the answers to. Did they really know that they were definitely drug boats intended on invading our country, which I believe they were. If they were, and they're engaged in an invasion, I don't think we have to wait until they actually hit the shores of Los Angeles, or cross the border in Texas, because we've obviously not been able to defend at that position, and we've tolerated a lot of injustice for a long time. So I would say yes, that is just defense of our land. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And I would even think, I'm just a little bit more, I'm not hawkish, but I'm not isolationist in that way either. So I would say there could be just reasons for displacing Maduro and bringing him back and holding on trial, even without drug boats. So in what was it, like the year 2014 or whenever, I don't know, when did Maduro take power? My understanding is that he seized the assets of American companies.
Right.
So there were actual contracts made for American oil companies to produce the oil at a certain percentage. And it was actually more generous than they would give to a Texas owner. The little family that discovers oil in Texas, they might get 20% of the proceeds of what the oil company is able, with all of their capital, to extract from the earth and sell on the market. So they had given almost like a 50% deal. But what happened is once they created all that infrastructure, the communists just completely commandeered it and took over and nationalized the oil industry. So that's why Trump says that they stole our oil. They stole what the American oil companies had contracted to bring out in a capitalist system. So communism took over. So I guess my way of looking at it is, how evil is communism? And at what point does that become such a threat to its own people that it's just to defend the innocent? So I'm open to the idea that Maduro needed to go because of what he's doing to his own people.
I'm open to that too, but what I'm concerned with is um what I'm concerned with is making sure that we are able to have a just cause if we had to go to war, right?
And the biggest one in this world, as in the last century or so, is communism. So the Korean War in the 1950s, just or unjust? I don't even know if we ever called it a war, right? Was it just a military action?
Well, that's the problem. We've been doing that since World War II. We haven't declared war anywhere. We haven't gone through the process of getting Congress to authorize anything. And here's the problem, even if we have, we don't want to make Trump the dictator that people say he is. He's not. I don't think he is at this point, but we don't want to make him into one either. We don't want to make him the sovereign, the king. We don't want a king, because guess what? The next king that comes in that's not on our side, he ain't giving up power. Just like Putin won't give up power. You know why Putin won't give up power? Because as soon as he does, he's dead. Because that's what happens to dictators. Dictators don't get retirement. That's the one thing they can't have. They get death.
It's a good line.
Wow. Yeah. That is really good. Can you guys define just war theory, like just in like a sentence? What would you say it is, Joe?
Okay, so I would say that God does very specific, and this is something that tripped me up as a Catholic growing up, because no one would explain this to me. So it's one of the reasons I'm so interested in it, is that murder is not killing. God ordains just killing, lawful killing, for the protection of innocence primarily. And I think that when you look in the Bible and it says, "Thou shalt not murder," you go to the next page and we've got all kinds of different killing. And Romans 13 also gives the state the sword, and that is it's for what our culture does really wrongly. Our culture protects the criminal more than protects the innocent. And it's when the government engages in just killing, they have the interests of the innocent party in mind, of the elimination of the threat. How many times does God say over and over again, don't even let that evil near you, in multiple ways, right? So just war theory states that it has to be a defensive war. Now, this is the opinion of lots of scholars interpreting scripture for 2,000 years. How do we as Christians engage in a just war? Because they all recognize that in scripture, war is necessary, right? It's a necessary evil. It's something that has to be done. So how do we do it in a godly way? So I guess I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I mean, that'd be a whole nother, we should do a whole nother episode on that. But I mean, that's just it. I mean, how do you do it in a just way? And some of those things include elimination of scorched earth warfare, which is what General Sherman did in the Civil War. He just burned everything, crops. The idea being that when combatants, military from two nations, ordained by God, right? When two nations are in combat, that we should not destroy everything so that the citizens can still live. The non-combatants. We're not gonna destroy non-combatants, right? So that's pretty much it. I mean, that, and it's got to be defensive.
So let me ask you guys this then. Would this be just? So the island that John Cho went to, what is it? Or Sentinel Island? I forget what it's called, but John Cho went there and he got speared to death, and they seem to kill anyone who comes in. And it's an island that's not reached for Christ yet. Would it be just or unjust for a country like America to overtake that land for the sake of the people, because they're just so far lost and stuck in the same place their entire life? Is it better for the little babies that are living there and for the people living there that they get taught the scriptures and basically overtaken by force in the intention to help the island come to Christ?
Joe, you go first, and then I'll throw out my opinion.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to say. So I just looked up John Show real quick. I don't know who he is, but I see he went in 1956. He went to this island, and here's the
No, it wasn't
problem.
1956. It was like probably 2006 or something, or later.
Like,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
15 or something. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What you want to give some background on John Show real quick before I answer and put my foot in my mouth?
Yeah, John Cho he was probably like 26 years old, and he had a plan to go to the island that we're talking about, and no one's allowed to go on the island, and it's dangerous because they spear people to death. But his heart was to go there, and he paid people to take him there. And I think he tried to just go on the island and play soccer and do whatever. And he had spears thrown at him the first time, and then he went back, and I think they killed him. As far as I remember, Jeff, maybe
That's
you
right.
know more about
Yeah,
the
I think it's
story.
called like North Sentinel Island,
Yeah,
off of India. And my take, let me just give my whole view on
sure.
it. Okay. So when he went there, he went for the sake of the gospel, willing to lay down his life. I
Mhm.
don't think it would have been right for him to go in guns blazing. If they throw spears at him, he has to, like Jim Elliot and the missionaries that went to the Alca Indians, he had to be willing to lay down his life in that
Yep.
situation.
Yep.
But to Tim's question, I think that is a different issue. I think this would be a lot more like Hernan Cortez, is that his name? Who went to Mexico City and found that they were beheading people and doing human sacrifices. And he decided, instead of just making a peace treaty, that it was a people that needed to be conquered. And I think that was a just conquering because of the huge, enormous, like Noah, like days of Noah, like level of evil, right? So in our culture, we have this multicultural understanding that all societies, all nations, all cultures are equal.
I don't understand that.
That's part of multiculturalism, right?
Yeah, it
You have
is.
your culture as
Just take a class at college,
yeah.
your local
You can't
college.
judge your culture is better than it because there's no standard. By what standard would you even make yours better? But the truth is, cultures are very different. And our American culture, so influenced by the Bible,
Yep.
is way better than North Sentinel. And I would even say that the island of North Sentinel Island is so wicked and depraved that for a nation to go in and conquer would be just.
Here's my
That's my
problem.
feeling.
Here's what makes me itch about that. I believe wholeheartedly that the ideals of America 200 years ago, 250 to 200 years ago, that would be a true statement you just made.
Okay.
But today, we are at least two different nations, if not more. And we don't even have a cultural identity anymore. We're not one people. We need to be one people. And I don't think we get there by being inconsistent and going against our laws. We need to start following our own laws. Quite frankly, I think we're on the verge of a whole lot of people in this country figuring out that we're not consistent with our own laws, that the lies that they've been fed are just that, lies, that we don't even follow the Bill of Rights, So even though some good comes out of it, because God always does amazing things. And I'm so amazed at him coming through the inconsistency and the arbitrariness of all this junk. But that doesn't mean I want to promote us going across the planet and spreading the mess we've got. Does that make sense?
There are levels of evil, and there are differences between cultures, even though our culture is depraved, and especially compared to where we've been, we're still levels above other countries. So think about, take it all the way back to the French Revolution versus the American Revolution. If the British system of government and life conquers the French and that dominates the world, then you have an outcome as basically what happened with the British Empire basically winning that. But if the French had won, if the French Revolution had won and communism and socialism had dominated the world, we'd be living in a very different land right now, even the United States of America. Now, you take that from war to war to war. In each case, I think God has been providentially blessing us and restraining the evils of the world. So here's my view. World War I, World War II, the Korean War, I even think the Vietnamese issue, which wasn't really a war, I think having done it was better than not. Because I worked at a Vietnamese church for a number of years in Philadelphia, and the difference between the South and the North, the communists and the free capitalist Christians, many of them in the South, is night and day. The difference, if communism had been allowed to overrun Vietnam entirely, it would have completely just ruined everything. But America fought for the Christians as long as we could, got so many Vietnamese Christians out, rescued them, brought them to America, that now Vietnam has a strong contingent of Christianity. There's something, there was value in what we fought for. Now, there were also, it was also like the soldiers had their hands tied. They couldn't really fight. Like if you're going to go, I like what Cody Leibolt said about this. If you are going to go to war and meet it with whatever force is necessary to win. Politically, we didn't have the will to do that. And so because of all the hippie movement and all of this, we basically just muddled around for like a decade and then eventually withdrew and let the communists take it. So it wasn't executed well, but I'm saying in principle, take it back one war before that, the Korean War. What is the difference right now between North Korea and South Korea? It is
night and day.
Yeah, night and day. And it's the Americans getting involved for a just cause, right? Pyongyang was the Jerusalem of the East. There was a huge Christian movement there. Now, North Korea is the darkest place on earth.
Yes.
But where America stood and fought against the encroaching communism from Russia and China, where we fought, we planted the gospel, we supported the gospel. God used the sword to bring peace, and look at the outcome. So Korea is one of our greatest allies, South Korea, and it's truly an outpost for the gospel now, whereas the North is a wasteland. So you could take that war after war after war and just look at the providence of God in the purposes he accomplishes for the gospel, for peace on earth.
Amen.
I don't disagree in God's amazing intervention to make good things happen when evil is going on. But I do not think, I think out of all those wars you listed, I'd say only World War II was justified.
I would say that Venezuela was justified last month or a few weeks ago.
For which reason?
I would say Nigeria, if we get involved, is justified. I would say the overthrow of the Iranian regime right now, I am for. So there's three things. Now, I'm not saying that means we should be in a forever war there. I'm saying we should go in and do what justice demands, which is the Ayatollah Khomeini, who has literally in 2014 threatened to blow up Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. No, it was Haifa and Tel Aviv, not Jerusalem. He was going to use the nuclear bombs there. That's a real threat. And it would only take one nuclear weapon if he somehow got it to America to justify us acting now before he gets to that point. So
I completely agree with that. So here's the problem. Yeah, nuclear stuff throws everything out of whack, right? I mean, it's one of the reasons, it's probably the primary reason that instead of that there was an act put in by Congress, even though they really needed to do a constitutional amendment, they did an act, and they gave the president the ability to go out and do any kind of emergency thing he needs to do, because I mean, you know, we're not gonna get Congress rallied up, you know, when there's a nuclear strike going on. So that has to be considered. The problem is we're not acknowledging justice and God. We're just doing it because we want to.
Well, I have a more favorable view of America at this point. Like, I agree with you. You know, I preach against the evils of America probably every week, right?
I know.
The LGBT movement, all this stuff that's taken over our land. But
Mhm.
America is still the most righteous nation left on earth. Maybe South Korea or a few other places are similar, but we're the only one that has a sword that can
Mhm.
restrain the likes of Putin. You know,
Right.
if Ukraine didn't have some backing behind them, they would have been completely overrun.
Right.
And I'm not sure that, you know, what's going on there, whether we should be involved at the level that we are, that's a more complicated one. But I do think our protection of Israel is God's providence.
Now, now it
Yeah.
becomes hard because that's on a macro scale. What
Right.
about micro things like when you see abortion clinics, right? It's got to be totally wrong to bomb the place, but at the same time, you're saving some lives and killing others, right?
We have
Or
exported the destruction of the family across the planet. And I can tell you, this is a really unique thing you might not know, but Britain, India, Australia, I've had people from all those places on my former podcast about no-fault divorce and the wickedness in family courts. They've all got the same system in place. Now, was it America that spread it or was it Britain that spread it? I'm not sure. Could have been either. But I think it was America, you know. So we've spread that. We spread feminism, and we've spread yeah, all the different things that destroy the family.
Yeah.
Homosexuality,
To answer Tim's
LGBTQ.
question and tie it in with what you're saying, Joe, there's a difference between God using a nation as a sword and vigilanteism, right? So an individual is not to go and take up the sword against an abortion clinic, you know, something like that. That's actually the very reason that God put nations in place.
Mm-hmm.
The government has to be the law and order, to enforce law and order. So at the macro level, that might be restraining the evil of another country.
Yeah, and you've got no argument from me if you're telling me, Joe, you have to trust that God's going to use the nation to restrain evil, and there's tons of evil that he is restraining. I know it was so much worse, but I think we've got to really think through some of these things and say, I think he's pushing us to think through these things and say, don't
For sure.
do something,
But
make your nation more Christian.
Think categorically, right? So you have a nation that God will wield as such.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to reform the nation from within. That's a different category. So
Right.
fighting all the evils in our own land and trying to get the right politicians in place. You need another Dusty Devers in Oklahoma, fighting.
We need a lot of Dusties.
You need a lot of Dusties in place to try to overturn what's going on internally.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's a different category than nations restraining nations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for clearing
Yeah.
that up, because things like that bother me all the time, and
Like what?
that helps. Like, all right, for example, this I'm going to sound a little crazy, but when you see a gay couple who adopt a little black boy and you're out at a restaurant, and part of me, I don't know about other people, but part of me, if there wasn't crazy
It's flat out child
consequences and I
abuse. Go
wasn't
ahead,
sure if
say
it
it.
was
It
right or
is.
wrong, basically, to me, it would be better for that child if I kidnapped it. But
Yeah, I'd agree.
I would never do that. So, you know what I mean? But that's helpful that Pastor Jeff just laid that out, and you have to trust the government to do things like that and settle things like that. But that doesn't mean we can't speak out against evils like that.
Right.
Right.
And I
Any
think
kind of government's better than anarchy.
Right. And also, we have to understand trade offs in this world, right? So, if you have the American system with all its flaws, it is still fundamentally built on capitalism. It's fundamentally guarding of human rights, even though they don't regard babies in the womb as being human. So, therefore, they don't give rights. In a general sense, the United States of America system has a Bill of Rights, human rights, individual rights, because it's built on individualism. If you look around the world to systems that are built on collectivism, So communism, those nations pose a greater danger than we actually realize. We take for granted the protection and the umbrella that we live under in the United States of America. So, like, think about the BRICS nations. It was Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're trying to form a bloc to displace the dollar as world currency, to displace America as the governing empire over the world. But ultimately, if, let's say, BRICS did form as some allegiance, now that's breaking up, by the way, because Brazil is moving back toward America, as South America has done with Melee and Argentina, now with Venezuela losing its communist kind of foothold. Cuba might be the next to fall in that way. So all that to say, though, if BRICS really formed its own block of power that displaced America, we lose the freedoms that we have now. We take for granted what we have now. It's not.
That's what I was referring to before.
Necessarily going to be here all the time. But if America with Israel and with Western Europe continues to dominate, then it restrains evil. So that's why this Iran thing is so important. If Iran falls, it breaks up the entire network from China and Russia into the Middle East and all the way down into Africa. They're trying to extend influence and take the minerals, the rare earth, the oil of the Middle East. And the question is, who actually will control that? Who will control the shipping lane? So why is Greenland so important to Trump? I would bet that there are nuclear subs underwater. There is a lot of stuff going on between Russia and that bloc trying to control it. Maybe there's even a threat that they would overtake it. Who knows? Like there are so many things going on behind the scenes. And I'm just the guy who thinks that it's a lot better when America has the bigger sword.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to even take on, what you're saying, because there's so many little nuances, right? And like one of them that I'm thinking about is, what you were saying before. Yeah, it's better. Like we're gonna lose our ability to maintain our wealth if the dollar is no longer the world currency. But that's because of our sin, right? It's because of our wickedness with our lying, and that happened right before World War I. It's kind of the reason we went to World War I. Was when we left the we went to the central bank model, and we gave people the ability to start devaluing currency and steal from the people, which we've been doing. You look at the inflation index. I mean, it's insane that how the dollar's been devalued. And so I think one of the things in just war theory is, do we have the ability to go and engage in war and win? That's one of the things you have to evaluate. Do you have the ability to win? Man, we're talking about a lot of different fronts, and I know we've got a huge, massive industry of military machinery. But can we maintain credibility in what we're doing, and will the people back us in a divided nation?
That's 100% right, Joe, because that's the battle we're fighting. That's why the culture war is so important. If we lose this and we keep allowing the Fed to do more and more, then America itself is lost, and the whole world will suffer because of it. But like, what is true of America is also true of the real in Iran. What have they done to devalue their currency? And that's why everybody rose up against it, right? And why is it that the nations still use the dollar instead of something else? Because it actually is more trustworthy to them, even though it's starting to lose that trustworthiness. It's more trustworthy to them than anything else.
Our current system's trying to repeat what Rome did, right? Then we just look at Rome. We're like, we're going to copy exactly what they did. And I read somewhere that the drachma, or is that the coin Jesus held up? What was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So they said that Roman coin, from the time from Jesus's time till the fall of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, that went from 80 or 90% silver down to like 5% silver, because they're just totally corrupt, and we're doing the same thing. We're like pulling out of the playbook, where as so much so that we've now, even most good Christians think that the word democracy is a good thing, right? But our founding fathers purposely left that out of any founding documents because they didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the democracies of Greece and Rome, because they really studied those things and said, no, we're gonna follow this new history that's biblically based. So anyway,
we're a constitutional republic, so it's lex rex, law over king. So the king is not the people, the demos, the rule of the people. Because if the people become wicked, and more than half the people are that way, they could just vote for the most wicked things in the world. But instead, what we did is the founders created a constitution with certain things that rule over the land. So it's a
so people know
republic.
that, Jeff, but they don't know the underlying definitions. They don't know that a constitution, it's based on this law, but what law? But we got to defend it. It's God's law. That's why we're a Christian nation, because we are constitutionally based. The Constitution's there's principles that go above the ability of people to vote in things, but we let Congress vote in anything they want.
Right. And Tim, let me get your opinion on it in a second, but I think that this all comes down to the church's restraining role. So we're in a country that has all this amazing heritage. We have a constitutional republic, but it really comes down to if you can keep it. Who was that? Was it Jefferson that said, like, what have you given us? And he said, a republic, a constitutional republic, if you can keep it. The key to keeping it is that the people have to uphold morals. And the church is what restrains the rise of evil in the land. Socialists like Mamdani, who's going to stop that? It's going to have to be the pulpits and the Christians of this land exposing it for what it is. Mamdani is no different than Maduro, but now he's right here in New York City. So someone's got to preach, and the people have to hear, and the church in that way will restrain the evil from overtaking America. And in the same way, nations like America will continue to restrain the evils of the world. So the only way to stop a nuclear Iran is the United States and Israel working together to make that happen. Because I don't know if you guys are following Iran, but the people have risen up. But they've killed at least 2,600, probably 12,000, maybe 20,000. Why are they not doing public executions today? Well, they had them all scheduled, but Trump has warned, if you do this, we will come. And that was enough to cause them to back off. Now, maybe they'll go through with it anyway, and then Trump will have a decision to make. But if there's not a restraint on evil, we can't be naive to how evil the world really is. That's my big point. And God uses the sword of government to do that. So, Tim, what do you think?
I think that was spot on, Pastor Jeff. And I think it's so important for people who might be listening or happen to be listening right now that they find a Bible-believing church that isn't afraid to tell the people this and warn the people about things like this. So there's a lot of squishy churches out there, the blue churches, the gray churches, and I would say they're bad churches, and they're not resisting the evil. They're not taking any ground for the kingdom. They're not doing anything that the Lord is calling them to do. So where you hear all of this information is really important. And if you're not at a biblically sound church preaching this and teaching you this, then you might be relying on information from the internet or YouTube, and maybe it's Candace Owens, maybe it's someone even worse than that, and you're going to be really confused. So it's so important for Americans that are saying that they're Christian to find a real Christian church.
Verse by verse. Got to be preaching verse by verse. If they're not preaching verse by verse, the best pastors are going to skip stuff. Yeah. They just will, because they're sinners too. I mean, no offense, guys, but you know.
None taken, Joe.
I know. Yeah. I even, you know,
did you guys hear?
Go ahead.
Sorry, did you guys hear Drew Deegan's communion and he was about to say, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a sinner. But he caught himself and said, I don't know about you guys. And he said, wait a minute, I do know about you guys. You guys are all sinners because the Bible has told me.
That's
Right?
great.
So that's okay. We know that we're sinners, and we know that we're prone to make mistakes, but that's why we need to follow God's word as closely as we can, and rightly dividing it. And verse by verse is the best way to hold the preacher accountable, so they're preaching the Bible.
Yeah. And where can preachers go get help that say, you know, I haven't been doing this the right way? Where can they go to join up with fellow pastors to talk about, you know, how should I be leading the flock to stop some of this evil?
They need to go.
Truth Fellowship.
You got it. And they need to come to the conference. We have a conference in Tampa, Florida this year, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Just go to thetruthfellowship.org, scroll down and click attend, and you've got all the information for the conference in Tampa. We need to get together, and we need to be the ones that restrain evil in the land.
Truth Fellowship.
Amen. I think that might be our first commercial for Truth Fellowship.
.org. Yeah. Yes, it was. Very well.
Truth Fellowship. You got to have the if you're going to find it. Thetruthfellowship.org.
Because what's the grammatical thing that the is? That's also
definite article.
An indefinite article, because the indefinite article matters, right?
The definite article.
Oh, the definite, not indefinite.
Indefinite would be like a Truth Fellowship or and.
That's where the J-dubs get mixed up in John 1, right?
Yes. In the beginning
and the
was
definite
the word,
article. The use of the definite article.
Yeah. They didn't know how to translate at that particular point. The grand Bolshevik construction. All right. Well, let's sign it off.
Let's wrap it up. This was a good episode.
Rang.
We can't go any more without getting into another hour, and we'll do that again, guys. The next time we're on TDHP. So, but for now, when you see a brother down,
pick him up,
lift him up, and you see a high place, tear it down.
Tear it down.